Hello, my name is Jennifer Hamilton, and I'm going to talk to you about skeletal muscles. Skeletal muscles are striated, which means they're striped. There are 640 of them in our body, so they make up 40% of our body weight. The skeletal muscles are voluntary, so we can make them move however we choose. If we want to shake somebody's hand, then it's a voluntary movement, so our brain will tell our muscles to make our bones move, so we were able to do that. Skeletal muscles are made up of tissue, connective tissue, nerves, and blood vessels, and this is held together with a thin sheath. And I will explain to you what the three different connective tissues are. Each skeletal muscle is formed of three different types of connective tissue. The connective tissues work together with the tendon when the muscle contracts to pull the bone. So the first layer is the epimysium, and it is the outermost layer, and it surrounds all of the skeletal muscle. And inside of the epimysium is the paramysium. And you can see, like I said, there are blood vessels. These little black things are the blood vessels, and then the nerves are here inside. So there's this thin sheath of the connective tissue, the blood vessels, and the nerves. The epimysium is the outer layer, and it's made of dense, irregular connective tissue. The second layer is the paramysium. You can see here, the paramysium is in each skeletal muscle, and the muscle fibers are in groups or fascioles. The fascioles are a fibrous connective tissue, and that lies within the paramysium. So you can see the epimysium here that surrounds the outside, and then inside are the paramysium that are these little red things. If we enlarge this, you can see the fascioles here, and it is also striated. You can see the different stripes here. Within that is the endomysium. This is the innermost part of our muscles, and the endomysium has the muscle fibers inside. The endomysium is inside the fascioles, and it's wrapped in sheaths of loose connective tissue. So what happens is the muscle fibers will start here, and when our nerves send a message, our brain sends a message to the muscle fibers to contract, and it will go to the endomysium, the paramysium, and then the epimysium. These three things work together with the tendon. The muscle contracts, and the tendon is here. This is what attaches the muscle to the bone. So the tendon, you can see these are like rubber band markings, and it goes all the way down through the muscle and attaches to the bone. So these three connective tissues work together with the tendon. The muscle contracts, the tendons pull, and the bones move. Okay, so let's review one more time. Muscle fiber is inside of the endomysium. The endomysium is inside the fasciole. The fasciole is inside the paramysium, and also the blood vessels and the nerves. And then the epimysium is the outer layer that surrounds the whole thing, connected with the tendon, which connects the bone to the muscle. Okay, now I'm going to explain to you how this works. Okay, so how does this all work? How do our muscles make our bones move? First of all, there are two proteins called actin and myosin that work together to fire up ATP and make the proteins in our muscles move. Sarcomeres contain the actin and myosin, and actin is a thin filament and the myosin is the thick filament, and they are connected by a Z line inside of our muscles. So when our muscles contract, the sarcomeres will contract, pulling the actin and myosin towards each other towards the Z line. I'm going to demonstrate how this works with my arm. So all the muscle fibers are inside inside here, the muscle fibers with the connective tissue, the thin filaments, the actin and the myosin, the thick filaments. And what happens is my brain says to my nerves and my muscle to contract. So the endomysium, the paramysium, and the epimysium from the muscle fibers all start to contract. And what happens is it triggers the bone to move. Each one is connected through a joint. So you have a bone, and then your tendon connects the muscles and the bones at your joint. And you can feel the bones stick out, that's where it attaches together. So there's insertion. Okay, so each skeletal muscle goes from one bone to another, crossing over a joint. So if we think about our arm, crossing through a joint. So if we think about our arm, the humerus and the radius and ulna, the skeletal muscle and the tendon is here where it attaches the bone to the muscle, and it goes through the joint, causing one of the bones to stay still and one of the bones to move. When this happens, the bone that stays still is the origin. And origins are proximal to our bodies, especially in our limbs. The origins are proximal to our body. So in this case with our humerus, it's closest to our body. It's the origin, so it will stay still. The muscle will contract, causing the humerus and the ulna to come up to our shoulder, the forearm to raise up. And this part of the bone that's moving is the insertion. So the origin stays still and the insertion moves. So those are the two parts of the bones crossing through one joint, muscle contracting, causing one bone to stay still and one bone to move. That is insertion and origin. Okay, if you remember at the beginning, I said that our skeletal muscles are voluntary, which means that we make them move. So how do we make our bones move? I showed you how it works with the insertion and the origin, but how does that all start? And the answer is nervous stimulation. So our nerve cells, or motor neurons, they wake up the muscle fibers that are inside, and then that goes to the three connective tissues, the endomysium, the paramysium, and the epimysium. So the brain fires off these motor neurons to wake all the muscle fibers up, and then the receptive regions of the neuron are the dendrites and the axons that initiate and transmit the nerve impulses. So when the nerve impulses start going off, then our muscles fire up, causing our bones to move. So like I just said, the muscle fibers contract because of their nerve endings or at the neuromuscular junction. So just to review, our bones will move from our skeletal muscles, which is striated, which means that it's striped, like I showed you with the dark and the light stripes. Our nervous system sends the nervous stimulations from our brain to our nerve endings and our muscle fibers, and that fires up the three connective tissues inside of the muscle. And with that, our muscle will contract, causing the bones to move, and the insertion, the origin, is the part of the bone that stays still. And the muscle contracts, causing the bones to move, pulling on the tendons. So I hope I did a good job explaining the different parts of the connective tissue inside of the muscles with the skeletal muscles. And next I'm going to show you one piece of muscle fiber taken from my picture, and I will show you what it is up close. And I am going to take this muscle fiber and explain how it works in a more detailed manner. Okay, so we're going to take this muscle fiber and look at it a little bit closer. The surrounding thin sheath that holds it all together is the sarcolemma, and inside are the myofibrils. You can see there's lots of different ones here, and then I've actually opened this here, and then you can see I pulled one out. This is the mitochondrion, and this is the myofibra. So this is full of the myofibrils that I've pulled out here. And then if you take it even further, before I do that, I'll show you that it's striated with the dark and light stripes here. And then here is the nucleus. The dark bands are the A bands and the light bands are the I bands. So if we take this out, here's a myofibril, and we're going to use this to explain the actin and the myosin. So let's pretend that these two lines, this one here and this one here, are the sarcomere, which would be inside of here. This is the Z line and this is the Z line. And one end is the thick filament, which is the myosin, and the other end is the thin filament, which is the actin. So all of these go inside of the muscle fiber. This is where the contraction starts with the actin and the myosin and the Z bands contracting, pooling together. So these are tiny little myofibrils that contain the sarcomere with the actin and the myosin. And enclosed are in the sarcolemma, which is also striated. And then when you pull one of the myofibrils out, you will have the Z disc on the sides with the thick filament, the myosin, and the thin filament, the actin. And then between here is where they pull together to make all the muscle fibers start working. Okay, so this is just a closer look. Here, myofilaments, myofibril, to this part. See? Okay, and I think that covers everything. Thank you.